What is up, guys? Welcome back. As promised, today is the do's and don'ts of no makeup video, and I basically filmed this look that you see before you coming together, and I'll just insert those clips as I'm explaining my tips. But I do want to start by saying, do whatever you want and don't listen to me. I don't claim to be any kind of expert on anything makeup oriented. These are just practical tips that I have found through experience, coming from a place where I had very bad skin, very blemished skin, very pigmented skin, and felt like I needed to cover it up completely before I could even start thinking about, doing anything fun with my makeup. And it took me longer than I expected to. And it was harder than I expected it to be to start unpacking those preconceived notions of how I was supposed to fix how I looked and correct things that were wrong. And a lot of it came from the same motivation in my brain as picking. So it was very much, this is wrong about your face and here's a way to hide it or fix it. And I want to try and help with the mental exercises of getting away from hiding anything. I don't want to ever think about clothes being something that I'm hiding in or makeup being something that I'm hiding in. And this is definitely more of a thought exercise kind of set of tips than, application tips or things like that. But I will suggest some products that I think lend themselves well to these techniques. And without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so my first don't is don't skip skin prep. Even if you've done your moisturizer and your SPF a while ago, like when you woke up and washed your face and it's a couple hours later and you're deciding to put some makeup on, put something down that's going to help with slip on your face. I used the Auric Glow Lust today, but sometimes I'll use the Becca Light Shifting Dewing Tint, that thing, or a primer that has a little bit of luminosity to it, anything that's gonna feel a little bit hydrating to my skin and make it so that my skin has a little bit of life to it before I start putting pigment on it. Now, my first do is nail your skin match. So if you're choosing any kind of skin tint or concealer or anything, make sure it's something that is one of the best complexion matches that you have, because it's gonna allow you to put less on. So today I use the Chantecaille Just Skin Tinted Moisturizer, and I have this in Alabaster. Alabaster didn't work for me in the Future Skin Cushion, but this is the fairest shade that they make in this one, and it works just fine. But it was my experience when I had the Future Skin Cushion in that Alabaster shade that was a little bit too dark for me. I found that I felt like I needed to put more of it on in order to cover more evenly and not be as selective about my coverage, because it didn't match my skin perfectly. So pick something that virtually disappears into your skin, and that is also why no makeup tends to focus on very, very light coverage kind of foundations and complexion products. I did just do a video that is my best no makeup based products. I will put it in a card and I can link it below for you as well if you want to see my selections for that. But my next don't ever think that just because this is no makeup, that it's only for certain skin types or that you can't powder it or something like that. I prefer these kind of hybrid textures that do have their own dry down, and that keeps me from having to powder, but I also have dry skin. A dry skin person can get away with wearing something dewier, and if it moves around or slips around initially, it's probably going to kind of dry down over the day as your skin soaks up the emollients in the product. But I do recommend the Fenty skin tint, for example. It is a much more matte finish, comparatively speaking. And there are a lot of other complexion products that can be thinned out with oils or primers or shimmer goos of any kind and get a lighter coverage with the finish that you want. And there are a lot of powders out there that do a great job of mattifying in a way that's going to soak up oil over the day, but it's not going to add coverage. So for example, the Kosas I feel like doesn't add coverage. The Ilia doesn't add coverage. The the Glossier Wowder does not add coverage. There are a lot of them out there that don't, and I just recommend looking for something like that if you do feel like you need to powder either your whole face or just around your eyes or the other parts of your face that start to get oily. Okay, my next don't sweat the imperfections. There is like an old blog post that I wrote before I think I even started my channel, and it was called "What's Wrong with Your Face?" And it said the answer is simple: nothing. Just approach your makeup routine, if you're not already, from the standpoint of, this is my face. I would be perfectly happy walking out of the door with it looking exactly the way that it does, because this is my face. And then start to think of makeup as a way of accentuating the things that you really enjoy. And sometimes it is like positive affirmations. Try and keep from the negative self-talk in your brain. I'm definitely susceptible to it. And you know, that doesn't mean that you have to go out with like all of your blemishes showing or your dark circles or whatever makes you feel self-conscious, like the whole reason a lot of times that we buy a concealer. But think about what you think when you see someone else's freckles or their sunspots or their blemishes or their under eye bags in public. Do you think, oh my gosh, she didn't put on enough makeup, he should cover that up, it's offending my eyes? No, you probably just think nothing. You think that's a person, that's a human being, that's what skin looks like. Understand that most people are probably granting you the same privilege. No one's judging you for not covering a blemish well enough. No one's judging you for having sun damage. No one's judging you for not tweezing your eyebrows or what have you. And come at it from that standpoint of loving yourself and giving yourself the same grace that you give everybody else. You know, I always say, see yourself the way that Jonathan Van Ness would see you. If you don't watch Queer Eye, you might not know what I'm talking about, but he tells everyone how beautiful they are, and as soon as he tells them how beautiful they are, you go, they are beautiful. Wow, everything is so unique and beautiful about them. And then you think, why don't I think of myself that way? Why do I critique my crooked nose or my close together eyes or my skin's proclivity towards pigmentation, these things? And you start to see that it's not about fixing you or homogenizing you or hiding you. It's about looking at yourself and seeing beauty, and then really enjoying putting on makeup kind of after accepting the fact that you're beautiful as you are. So another hard lesson, embrace yourself. This is something that I talked about in a video a long time ago, but it's one that kind of always rattles people when I say it, but we're always loving a future version of ourselves or a past version of ourselves. Oh, I wish I looked younger, or oh, I need to get X, Y, and Z done in order to be really happy with my appearance. That way, you are never loving the version of yourself that is right now. And if you spend your whole life longing for a past or future self, especially if your future self would really like to be your current self, that's a good one to think of too. In 10 years, you'll wish you'd appreciated how you looked. I spent my 20s hating my body in my like I wasted my 20s body on hating my body, which is so dumb. You know, like you think about those kinds of things, you're gonna get all the way to the end and realize that you never actually loved yourself in real time. Like if you don't learn to love yourself in real time, you'll never actually learn to love yourself. You'll always have caveats and exceptions to looking at yourself in the mirror and looking for something that needs fixing or looking for something that you wish looked like it used to, even though at that point you still didn't appreciate it. So just move the goalpost back towards yourself and go, goalpost right here. I'm where I want to be. And again, in 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to look back and go, I was so beautiful. So like, why not appreciate it now? That said, and I talked about this in my complexion products for no makeup, don't sleep on a full coverage concealer. And it's not because you necessarily need it all over your face, but a full coverage concealer can be so incredible for putting like a pinpoint in a spot when you're wearing otherwise almost no coverage. And it just kind of camouflages right into everything else, and whatever it was, like this, you know, very large healing zit that I have on my chin just completely disappearing and being out of sight, out of mind. I just kind of want to adjust the expectation that just because it's no makeup, it doesn't mean that you're like not allowed to cover something up. Again, do whatever you want, don't listen to me. Those are my main do's and don'ts, but just because it's supposed to be a low coverage look doesn't mean that you can't pull out a high coverage concealer if something really annoys you. It can make a really big difference, especially at the very end when I've kind of over blended all of my blush and everything to bring the brightness back out and add dimension back into my face. It really, really helps sometimes. So don't think that like someone's shoving you into a corner and like rendering some of your makeup like off limits or wrong. Do mixed textures. I think that it's so important when you're trying to achieve something that looks like skin to try and accentuate what the skin already wants to do. So you think about, what do healthy lips look like? They're full, they're bouncy, they might be glossy or a little bit, I don't know, just supple looking. So I would much more lean towards a more exaggerated version of that, like a nice glossy lip that is very much, you know, my lips but better kind of color. And then, you know, let that stand in contrast to a slightly less dewy skin situation. And what that's gonna do is it kind of controls the way that the light interplays with the different parts of your face, and you can use that. It makes things look more believable. And so, you know, for some of us, that means that, you know, a brow mousse is going to, or like a brow pen that's got a little bit more of like a sheen to it, is going to look more believable. So if you're like building up your brows as your focal point, it's going to make them like catch the light naturally like brows instead of like penciling them in with something that's really matte. Or like, you know, fluffing them through and getting like a more solid brow that's going to look a little bit more made up. Again, do whatever you want, do what makes you look like you, but I just like to kind of think about what the natural textures of things are going to look like, and then just exaggerate those textures, and that interplay makes things look more believable instead of like, if your whole face ends up the same texture, a lot of times it, regardless of what that texture is, it just doesn't look real. Now, again, breaking the rules that or at least I had in my own brain, right? Because I think that the way that I started thinking about no makeup was when I started being a Glossier rep, and I still had pretty blemished skin, and I was really trying to adjust the way that I looked at it as a means of embracing the imperfections. But when I did, I was like only using Glossier, and Glossier didn't have a whole lot of products at the time. And so I would end up with this face of makeup on that I still felt like didn't really look like me. And it's because we have these things in our brains sometimes that are the ways that we're used to seeing ourselves when we have like done the work to put the makeup on, and we want to feel pretty, or we want to feel, you know, whatever we're trying to accomplish. And I think that you should still do those things. So for me, it makes an enormous difference to just have a little bit of eyeliner, like a little bit of eyeliner and a little bit of lip liner. And I don't want you to think that just because you're going for some kind of really like low maintenance look, that you have to skip the steps that you really like about your makeup routine. So for me, you don't have to change them at all, but for me it's like, okay, if you take something that's typically like black and make it brown, or something that's typically really graphic and make it smudgy, or you take something that's usually a liquid and make it like a cream or a powder, and just blend everything a little bit. Experiment, you know what I mean? Like, have fun with it and see what you can get away with in terms of the, you know, pushing the boundaries back and forth of what you want the focal points on your face to be. And for me, you know, I just find that like I can get all the way down with a face of makeup and be like, yes, that's very pretty. But if I just turn up the volume 1/2 of a notch by putting a little tiny bit of smudgy eyeliner on and a little tiny bit of lip liner, I think it's perfect. So, you know, why not? Do not, and this is obviously going to be no surprise to you guys if you've spent any time on my channel, do not be afraid of rich tones. When it comes to putting on this kind of makeup, I am all about more impact for less effort. And so if you're thinking that, you know, no makeup means that the blush should be invisible, well, you know, you're always going to get a vote of confidence from me to apply more blush. But when you're choosing a tone even, just because you're fair skinned or just because you're cool toned or, you know, whatever, don't think that that means that you can't wear something that's very richly pigmented, especially like on your cheeks or on your lips. It's more about the texture. It's more about kind of spreading it out and you can see your skin through it, or that on your lips it's still really healthy looking, but the color and the richness of the color actually makes it look more real. Because if you were to go outside and take a lap in cold weather, your cheeks would get flushed a lot more than like the typical application of blush. And it wouldn't just flush your cheeks, it would also flush your lips. It would flush your whole face, you know, you'd get it on your forehead and everything. And you know, that's typically what I'm trying to achieve, is mimicking nature. So again, do what makes you comfortable, but you can get so much more impact with so much less effort if you choose a really, really nice, like pigmented, rich color. Okay, so one more don't and one more do. Don't screw around with eye products that are going to run all over the place. That is why I swear by tubing mascaras. Tubing mascaras are water resistant. You apply them. You remove them with warm water and they sort of loosen as you steam them essentially, and they come off in little tubes off your lashes and they never run or anything like that. But they don't get resoluble by oily or watery, wet, sweaty things around your eyes. Typically, I have seen in extreme circumstances, if you sweat a lot, the tubes will just come off, but it never gives you raccoon eyes. The reason that I do that is because I do like to wear creamy products around my eyes. These types of makeup looks a lot of times do focus on things being creamy, right? Or oily or balmy or whatever, and not having like a perfect powdered dry down or like a super, super mattified texture. And so the mascaras and the eyeliners you might be accustomed to using are not going to stay put as well if you're using something that's oil-based around them, because oil is typically what you would use to take that kind of stuff off. So it's very, very prone to just resolving and getting everywhere and smudging. Even like the nicest, most expensive, like clean mascara is gonna smudge all over the place if you put something like oily creamy around it. So that is why I recommend the Thrive, the Hourglass, what's it called? I don't know, it's their tubing mascara formula, the Unlocked formula. And right now I'm wearing the Victoria Beckham and it is lovely. All three of those really do what I want them to do, but if you want something lighter weight, there's like the original Blink, there is the Glossier, and there is the M Cosmetics. Those are all really, really lightweight, and there are a bunch more. But those are kind of the ones that, I don't know, get my approval as far as the effect. And finally, do try fake freckles. Sephora just started carrying Freck, which is pretty cool. And I think that they have even expanded the amount of product that you get for your money. I'm not totally sure. I haven't had to repurchase it. Even the teeny tiny one that I have, hard to keep track of, but I'm not running out of it. The reason that I say this is, especially if you do have freckles, but even if you don't, if you end up with product on your face and you feel like it still looks a little bit much, you don't have to like rub the product off your face. If you add some freckles on top, it makes it look so much more like no makeup. It looks like skin, and you're almost like adding imperfection back into your face in a way that you're controlling. And I don't know, so a lot of people comment when I like talk about my freckles, people are like, I wish I had freckles. Freck is very effective. It is super effective, and I think it comes in a couple of shades now. They only had one shade for a long time, so I think they expanded that. But yeah, I have like fake freckles on kind of around my nose, and use them in ways that you wouldn't expect, like, you know, kind of put them up underneath your eyes and stuff, or like, you know, even kind of over near your lips, and it's going to really accentuate the illusion that you don't have makeup there. And if they're ever too dark, all you have to do is just kind of keep pushing your fingers into them and it'll stamp them. And if you are concerned about them getting too dark, just stamp them really soon after you put them on. The longer that you leave them there, the darker they get. So, I mean, the more they dry. So the darker they will stay before you stamp them, kind of thing. But man, you can go to town. And if you hate them, you can just take your complexion brush or your blush brush or whatever and just, you know, smudge them back out. It's a very forgiving process. I really, really like the freckles. So a couple of tips that I think can really help in a pinch. One is when you get done and maybe sometimes when I feel like a makeup look isn't kind of working out, maybe the concealer that I tried ended up having its own dry down that was a little bit too matte, or I just feel like things aren't really blended well enough, or I just have kind of too much product on my face, I will take a setting spray that has a little bit of glycerin to, I think almost all have glycerin to them, but something that's supposed to be dewy or not mattifying. It shouldn't even have to be dewy, but something that's not mattifying. So I love my Lila B. It's like all gone. I'm so sad. The Lila B, the Ilia is pretty good for this. This isn't even meant to be a setting spray, I don't think, but the Tower 28 Daily Rescue Facial Spray. And then you wet a sponge. And so you give yourself a really good spritz, and then you take a wet sponge and you just press the makeup in. And what it's doing is it's actually, the glycerin is dissolving a little bit of the makeup and making it so that you have less on your face, but the proportions stay the same. And you can use it to kind of just make everything look a little bit more skin-like. The glycerin, anything with glycerin in it is going to give you that really nice like bounce on your skin. Also be mindful of temperature. So as you're putting things on your face, look at how they're interplaying with your lip color, for example. That's actually a really, really good rule of thumb, I guess, because a lot of times when we're talking about no makeup, I feel like I've said it a million times, do not take a shot every time I say it. If you're seeing that like your cheeks look a lot peachier than your lips kind of thing, then, you know, if you wear a clear lip gloss, it's gonna look a little incongruous. If you want it to look good and natural, like you want it to look like something that would be naturally occurring, you wanna play in the tones that already exist in your skin, and a lot of times your lips are a great guide for that. And the best part about it is when you're working with a bunch of cream products, you can layer, and it's just a lot more forgiving because you can keep playing until you like it, keep layering things on until you like them, and, you know, watercoloring the blush. But the thing I notice about my lips is that they have a little bit of blue under them. So besides my lips having their own blue in them, I also use something that was a little bit plummy on my lips, the Garçon shade from Westman Atelier in their liquid lip balm, their squeaky clean liquid lip balm that I like so much. And so when I put my cheeks on, when I put the blush on, I noticed that I just kind of wanted to cool it off a little bit, and that is why you see me pull out the Salt New York Lilac shade, because it will kind of cool everything off. And I just work in that mindset of it's going to look more natural if I use my lips and my skin tone and the things that are naturally there as a guide point. So, you know, I used a bunch of really expensive products today just because I don't know, I found that the skincare in these complexion products actually really helps my skin, and I need all the help I can get right now. But there are a lot of really fantastic options. I do really love the consistency and the new shades from Tower 28 for this. This is the shade After Hours, a very, very good kind of rich, you know, warm berry kind of color. But I do have all of them and I really, really like them. I love the Melt Cosmetics ones. I love the Chantecaille one that I used today. And I also really enjoy these little cheek kisses from Milani. Whoopsies. They are extremely lightweight, which is what you want when you're watercoloring blush on. They just aren't really like off the beaten path in terms of color, but they do have like quite a few colors to choose from. They're very, very pretty, and I really like the formula. So, you know, work with the nuance, and you don't have to pay a whole bunch of money for this stuff, but I just wanted to show this to you guys kind of in its optimal presentation. You know, I wanted to use products that I could really count on, that I know exactly how they perform. And also, you know, as far as editorializing on this, since I did use like a little bit of glitter on my eyes, it was something that I knew would flatter brown eyes, and it would also kind of mimic the colors that I was wearing and everything. And so I'm kind of always keeping those things in mind. I didn't want to use, like, for example, a really cool toned highlight on my brow bone. So I used Stella from Thrive because it's a champagne color instead of Estrella, which is like a cool white. And these are just the things, again, don't be afraid to play and experiment. Give yourself time. That is another one. There is one thing that's a disadvantage about this kind of makeup, and that is especially when you're just getting your head around it, it takes a lot longer to put it on. I mean, anything new will, but there is something very quick and easy about taking a big brush or a big sponge and just applying one coat of something all over your face and being done with your complexion. Whereas I feel like most of the time, in a no makeup makeup look is occupied by doing your complexion and making it look really believable. It's just a little bit more artistic in that sense. So yeah, those are my experiential do's and don'ts, my tips for trying to achieve a believable look from your makeup, even if you want it to, in some places, be very obvious that you're wearing makeup. Obviously, I didn't wake up with my eyes gold and sparkly. That would be neat, but I didn't. But it's fantastic to have a set of tools in your repertoire to be able to manipulate and control the textures and the finishes and the coverage on your skin, you know, just to have this skill set in your back pocket so that you can, you know, go completely no makeup makeup, or you can go, you know, anywhere on the spectrum in between. So it's a fun thing to practice with, and it's why I love the products that I love so much, is because they give me so many options to play. So those are my thoughts. If you guys have any more questions, leave those down below. I'm sure that this did spark some questions or some video ideas, so definitely let me know that in the comments. If you guys found this valuable, or, you know, just enjoyed hanging out with me, do give the video a thumbs up. If you want to keep hanging out with me on this channel, hit the button down below and subscribe. I would love it if you guys did. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me today. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.